On October 5th of this year, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals published a ruling that ruled that DACA is illegal, unlawful. What does that mean for how Jews think about immigration and about refugees? And more broadly, how should we be influencing our country along these issues? Hello, everyone. Hey, Rabbi.
How are you?
I'm good. How you doing?
I'm good. I think we're in better shape than we were.
I was just going to say, we can hear each other.
My computers. It's always good when technology works.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, a couple weeks ago, we had a fail, which happens every once in a while. It's just going to happen.
Every so often it does.
Every so often. But it's a new year, which means we did tshuva. And we can now move on. So this October 5th was Yom Kippur, just a few days before Sukkot, which is this festival of welcoming people in, ushpizin, welcoming the stranger. It reminds me of Abraham sitting outside of his tent, and running to greet these three strangers. And we have this ruling that was passed down in Texas v. United States, saying that DACA is unlawful, that renewals are still available, but new applicants cannot be accepted. So that's the jumping off point. There's a lot more that we need to think about when it comes to immigration and refugees, but this is the jumping off point because this just happened. Let me just start with this, Rabbi. First of all, is there, broadly speaking, when we think about this idea of welcoming the stranger, how easily can I say that applies in this case, or that applies in cases of refugees and strangers? Is this a Jewish value that is applicable to these kinds of questions?
The answer is yes. Right? I think there is the notion of taking care of the stranger, widow, the orphan, those are the three categories of people who are seen as disadvantaged or potentially vulnerable in society, in biblical society. That command is not found once in the Torah, it's not found twice in the Torah, it's not even found 10 times in the Torah, it's found 36 times in the Torah. We're told that we should care for those groups. So the answer is yes, but I'm going to have a little bit of a caveat to that because the stranger that dwells among us, we understand who the orphan and who the widow are, but who are the strangers among us? The stranger actually is somebody who was native to the land to begin with, who existed in the land before the Jewish people came and took it over. So could we argue that it might not work perfectly? Maybe we could. But with that caveat said, I think that broadly speaking, Judaism has been a religious tradition that has looked to people who have been persecuted and said, how can we help them? I think that comes from our own history being persecuted people.
So what about the argument? I was, as you were speaking, we were getting a couple not so nice comments on YouTube, basically making the argument that welcoming the stranger is great, but not at your own expense. Not at the expense of your own safety. And so how can it be that Jews who themselves have been refugees, who themselves feel, find themselves under the threat, under constant threat, how can it be that it's a Jewish value to
So let's back up a little bit and let's talk about who are refugees. And here I am really guided by my teacher, my colleague, my friend Rabbi Lee Beisel, my mentor, the reason I am a rabbi, who wrote a book about this. And he argued that the language used to discuss refugees has become so politicized that it's really impacted greatly our ability to see them as human beings. Some people call them illegal immigrants, some people call them aliens, economic opportunists, even murderers and rapists. What is often forgotten in that is that refugee, the term refugee is a descriptive term referring to people who had to flee their homes for fear of persecution. Okay? Now that political rhetoric about whether to accept refugees in America has become increasingly heated and controversial, and that tension is understandable. Okay? How do we balance the desire to be welcoming and protect other human beings who have fled persecution with the need to control our borders and prevent the entry into those who do us harm?
I just want to jump in, Rabbi, and say that the first thing you pointed out is that refugees is a
it's a legal term.
It's a legal term, but it's also a narrow term. That is to say, we're not talking about everyone here. We're talking about people, and I guess one could ask the question, and again, we don't have to get into the specifics of DACA because neither of us, I think, are experts on this, but one could ask the question, are DACA recipients refugees?
So the answer to that, let's go to let's define a refugee first, and then we can back into it. All right, the United Nations High Commissioner on Refugees has a legal definition. It is someone who has been forced to flee his or her country because of persecution, war, or violence. A refugee has a well-founded fear of persecution for reasons of race, religion, nationality, political opinion, or membership in a social group. That is the definition. Now, taking that definition, what do we do with the DACA individuals? Well, keep in mind, all right, these are, what does the C in DACA represent or refer to? Children. Okay, these were children who were brought over because of their parents. Now, were their parents coming because they were refugees? Then the answer, if the answer is yes, then I think that that's correct. If the answer is they came over simply because they wanted to come over and they didn't go through the regular channels, then the answer might be no. Where I have to land is that I recognize I'm a liberal individual, so I have a more liberal sense of who we would define as refugees and who we wouldn't. Right? There isn't a part of the UN definition doesn't include economics. Right? It includes fear, right? Persecution, right? But economic opportunity isn't necessarily a part of that definition. Where the piece about how do we feel or how should we feel, I want to add that refugees, And in this case, I'm probably using the term more broadly than the definition. Okay? Immigrants who have come to this country for a variety of reasons, including economic opportunity, have been the lifeblood and not a threat to the United States. Have there been individuals who have committed crimes? Of course. But in terms of crime, the literature and the studies show that refugees commit fewer crimes than native-born. Right? And historically, people who have come to this country for whatever reasons they came wanted to ingratiate themselves with the society in which they find themselves. And they have done that throughout the centuries. The United States was shaped and developed by immigrants and refugees from all parts of the world.
And let's not forget, as Jews, that's us.
Well, that's where okay, so now we can swing around to the Jewish piece. So whether you like or don't like, or think it works or doesn't work, the love the stranger, the orphan, the widow, and the stranger among you, I think what you started with is a more compelling text, which is the notion of Sukkot being a holiday in which we welcome the mythic presence of our ancestors. And if we look at those traditional seven, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and then we get Moses, Aaron, and oh my goodness, I'm forgetting.
I can never remember all of them.
Yes.
Hold on, I'm looking it up as we speak.
I'll let you look them up. What I will say is, who are all of those? David, right.
David. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, Aaron, Joseph, David.
That's it. Every one of those was a refugee. Every one of them was escaping something in their lives. So is there a message that we take from the holiday that we just finished, and broaden it to the remainder of the year, and say, we Jews understand being refugees. Let's take Moses. He is the quintessential refugee who was taken from his family home, He was separated from his family. He was raised in a different country. He was in the same country, but in a different culture. Was cared for, and did very well there. And so I do believe that Judaism would instruct us to err on the side of being welcoming to those who we would define as strangers amongst.
It's funny that you went back to Sukkot, because when I said before that that's us, what I was thinking of is that is we are the Jewish community in America that has offered so richly, and of course, I'm being very particularistic here. Every community of immigrants has equally contributed, but we have contributed so richly to the American experiment, and we are all refugees. From Europe.
But then again, this is where I agree with you 100%. And I would just add to that, that from throughout our history, waves of immigrants, many of whom could be defined or classified as refugees, have come to the United States. Let's go to the pilgrims themselves. Mm-hmm. I mean, if we're going to talk about the origins of our country, and I'm acknowledging indigenous people, but the pilgrims who made it to this country made it because they were fleeing religious persecution. They were arguably the first refugees. Now you've got the 17th century, you've got the 18th century, you've got the late 19th century when the waves of Russian and Romanian and Eastern European, where I think you and your peeps and my peeps came to the country. What I think is interesting is that we have an American ambivalence towards the refugee because as soon as we get to the country and we go a generation and we're successful, then it's like close the doors.
Right, it's ours. It's
we don't want anybody
not in my
else.
backyard. It's that mentality, right? It's we talk about wanting to be welcome. We talk about the land of the free. We talk about what's the quote on the Statue of Liberty? Bring me your poor, you're tired, right?
You're tired, you're poor.
Bring them to me, but make sure they end up in a different state.
Right.
Quite literally, actually, down here in Florida, when we just randomly ship people to other states. Would if Judaism were a city, if there were such a thing as the Jewish city, would it be a sanctuary city?
Okay, I found this on the web for the Jewish city. Would it be a sanctuary city? Check it out.
Wait. Sorry, Siri just Siri was just Siri wants to be part of the podcast.
She was talking to her.
I wonder what her answer was. We should have asked her. That's funny.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
I'm dying to know what she wants to say. Let me weigh in while she's deciding. Do I think so? Yes, I think so. I think that certainly now, after a couple of millennia of being booted out of country after country, we come to understand the plight of those who are less fortunate. And our job is not to give charity, not to give pity on them, but to give tzedakah, to create a sense of justice and fairness, and that means elevating those who are not as fortunate.
The insidious underbelly of this, I think, in some ways, is at the forefront of many people's minds now because of this whole thing with Kanye West and the anti-Semitism that he was spouting. But I think that the ugliness behind this is not just this is my land, don't tread on me, but it's also racism and anti-Semitism. It's that we don't want to give up. We don't want to lose our identity to these people who are other.
Xenophobia. I think there's such an interesting dichotomy between a country that was founded on openness, and yet its long-standing history of xenophobia. And it's a circular story of conflict and angst leading to acceptance and assimilation and then reversion right back to nativism that creates that conflict and angst. And I think that unfortunately we're at the point where we're circling back towards a nativism that I don't think is healthy for our country long term.
Yeah, I think I want to go back just for a moment. You were defining refugee, and I think that it's nuance is what gets lost more quickly than anything whenever we're discussing any of these questions. You know, one of the arguments against I don't want to say again, it's not against open borders. It's against more lenient, progressive immigration policies, is that if we don't deal with the illegal immigrants, forget us. That's not fair to the legal immigrants, to the people who are waiting, who are following the rules, who are jumping through the hoops in order to get into this country. And we often mix that issue of legal versus illegal immigration with the question of refugees, which to me is a completely different topic.
Correct.
Refugees is about saving lives. Immigration is about people. Now that I'm saying this out loud, I realize how oversimplified this is. But immigration is more so about people choosing to come to a country and whether they choose it legally or illegally.
Right. Yeah. And I am sympathetic to people who live in countries that are not as developed as the United States, or who deal with greater economic poverty than the United States. And so I want to come, and I want to have the opportunities that the United States provides for me.
And to take that even a step further, to the extent that America participates in keeping other countries at a disadvantage economically, so that we can benefit, that perhaps also gives us an obligation or challenges us with whether or not we have an obligation to right a wrong that we've participated in.
Right.
So what would DACA, it seems to me, is about two questions. One is we've got a lot of folks here who are part of I don't understand it fully, but are part of DACA. They're already registered in DACA. And then we've got other people who would like to register in DACA. I guess maybe this is my last question for you. From a Jewish perspective, is there a middle ground that we need to find, or is it doors wide open? These folks all deserve to be welcomed in. I'm wondering if there's gray, because it sounds very black and white to me.
I think I'm going to answer the question, but you'll tell me otherwise. We have a broken immigration system, right? That it takes too long and is too onerous, or some would say not onerous enough. And we have all of these people who are sort of stuck. And so my simplistic, and again, we've
I feel the same way. Yeah.
The DACA piece, because neither one of us are qualified. Well, at least enough in public policy. It would seem to me that if we wouldn't be, our country wouldn't be worse off if people who are already registered, we just got them off the rolls. Make them citizens already, for crying out loud.
They're paying taxes. 10, 15, they're working
20
right.
years. And then maybe start fresh, right? And that way, we could put something in place that's a little more sensible. But I don't know that there's the political will to do it, because immigration in general has become so politicized. Right? And I would if you ask people individually about individual cases, they that's heart-wrenching. I get it. I would do it for that person.
But right.
That's right.
Right. And I would just argue that it goes back to two fundamental problems with this debate. One is the confusion over who we're actually talking about, and the second is that gross underbelly of just pure nativism and hatred of the other, xenophobia.
Correct. Yeah.
Well, that's a depressing conversation.
It's a challenging conversation.
It is a challenging conversation. But this week's Parsha, Lech Lecha, means there may be a journey ahead of us. We don't know where we're going.
I thought we were.
Don't tell me. Did I just do the wrong Parsha? Hold on.
Well, next week it'll be.
God, it's Noach. There's a flood coming.
That's all right. Well, we can talk about welcoming people into the ark.
We could that or a blue wave or red. What colors were the waves of with the election coming up? Welcoming them into the ark. That I like.
Yeah.
Making room. Wait. Okay. Can I leave with? Can I one last little piece? Okay. This is one of my favorite little pieces of Torah. So it's called a tzaddik im peltz. I'm sure you know this. This is not news for you. So the question is, what's the difference between Noah and Avraham? Right? Why is Avraham considered more righteous? And the answer,
because both of them are required. Both of them are defined as ish tzaddik.
They're both ish tzaddik, and yet Avraham gets like all the praise. So the answer is that comes in the form of a parable. The parable is, it's cold outside. It's cold outside. What do? Noah puts on a coat, a peltz, right? Tzaddik im peltz. He's a tzaddik, a righteous person in a coat. He puts on a coat, fixes the problem. He's now warm. What does Avraham do? He builds a fire. He builds a fire so that not only is he warm, but those around him are warm. When the world is coming to an end, Noah builds an ark. He saves himself and the few animals. When the world is coming to an end with Sodom and Gomorrah, Avraham fights back and says, "What do you can't do this." Avraham looks out for the others, and so maybe one of the challenges that we can have is, do we want to be a Noah or an Avraham? Do we want to just look out for ourselves, or do we want to build a fire?
So I thank you. That's a beautiful teaching, of which I will actually be playing on that. Not tomorrow, because tomorrow night we're doing breast cancer awareness. But on Saturday morning, I am going to be speaking about.
Did I just take your Dvar Torah?
No. I'm actually going to be talking a little bit about Kanye West, which I didn't think I was going to talk about. And the fact that protesting, and Noah doesn't protest. What makes difference between Abraham and Noah? When a whole lot of people are going to die, Abraham says, "Wait, stop!"
Right.
And Noah says, "I'll build an ark. I'll keep myself warm." Tzaddik im peltz.
Yep. There you go. All right, so everyone, come on Saturday morning, either in the sanctuary or online. Join us, and we'll see you on the boat.
Very good.
Thanks,
everybody.
See you later.
Bye-bye.